Welcome to Daily Armour. Today we're going to be in the book of Genesis chapter 12, looking at verses 1 through 4. Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 through 4. I'm still talking about, and I probably, Lord willing, will be talking about it for several days, but getting a word from the Lord. And I want to talk about another person who got a word from the Lord, and that's going to be Abraham. And here in the text, he's known as Abram. This is before God changed his name from Abram to Abraham. But we're going to be talking about what he did, and simply because he got a word from the Lord. So let's look at Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 through 4. And they say, Now the Lord had said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto a land that I will show thee. And I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and I will make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee, and in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed. So Abraham departed as the Lord had spoken unto him, and Lot went with him, and Abram was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran. So here we see that all of a sudden the Lord is speaking to Abram, and he's giving some instruction. Now he doesn't tell him. He doesn't give him a list of everything that's going to take place. He doesn't give him a plan. He doesn't give him, this is where you're going. He doesn't tell him where he's going. He doesn't tell him what he's going to be doing, other than he's going to make him a great nation. He's going to make him a blessing. He's going to make his name great. He doesn't really know much of what this is going to involve. He doesn't know much about where this is going to take place. He's just got a word from the Lord. Now, when we get a word from the Lord, and I remember the first word from the Lord that I got, and if you're saved, this is really the first word from the Lord that you got, was that I was lost and that I needed to be saved. That was very scary. And I even found myself arguing, not realizing, but it scared me. And so my defense mechanisms come in, and I'm like, but Lord, I'm a member of this church, but Lord, whatever list I come up with, I don't even remember what all I said, but I'm at church every time the doors are open, but I'm this, and but I'm that, and my husband's a preacher, and, this doesn't make any sense. I have to be okay. And that still small voice just kept saying, well, even the devil and the demons believe, and you're just a believer, and you need to be saved. I knew he was saying, you know me with your head, but his word for me was, but you need to know me personally. You know a lot about me, but you don't know me. And he invited me. I got that word from him. He invited me to know him personally. And at first I was scared, and at first I was in shock, and at first I was, was argumentative. But then just a few minutes later, that I was expressing, I'm on my way to hell, and I need to be saved, and I was in a panic. And a friend of mine went and got my pastor, which was Preacher Lockie, and he comes in, I'm just panicked, and he is calm as a cucumber, and he's even got this grin on his face. Why? Because he's seeing somebody under conviction, and he's seeing somebody that has submitted, like I had submitted to I was like, Lord, I am lost. Lord, I do see myself lost. Lord, I need you. I need you. I need you. But then I panicked and didn't know how to say it, how to ask him in my heart. And preacher didn't tell me what to say. He didn't tell me, repeat after me. He didn't do that. He just simply said, sis, you sit down right here. He said, me and Dawn are going to be praying for you. And he said, you just sit right down there and you talk to the Lord. He said, he will even give you that. He gives us everything. I mean, absolutely everything. We don't have to know all the details because he's already got everything figured out. We don't have to figure them out. And so I just sat down. There was this little desk. I was saved back in one of the little Sunday school classrooms. I was under conviction during preaching in the sanctuary. But I had Kinsley she was a year old. She was a baby. And she woke up, she had been asleep, she woke up crying, so I had to take her to the nursery, which was absolutely a blessing because Todd's cousin Melanie was back there in the nursery, and she was able to keep my child. And Hayden was young. He was, about 3 years old, and, or almost 3 years old. And no, he would have been 3. Anyway, he was young, so I took him and Kinsley, and I went back to the nursery, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna, I'm confused, I'm panicking, I'm getting back there, and my friend Dawn was back there, and she had tried to leave to go pick up her son from Bible school at her sister-in-law's church, and she didn't have her keys. And so her husband had her keys, which was sitting in the middle of the sanctuary with my husband, because they had a group of West Lenore boys that they were taking care of. And she couldn't enter. She didn't want to interrupt the service to go find her keys because it was right smack in the middle of it. I mean, it would have been a whole fiasco for her to get her keys. So she just called her sister-in-law, and she's like, I'm just going to watch the service in the nursery because we had a TV in there to watch the service. And I walk in, and I'm like, Melanie, can I leave my kids with you? And she's like, sure. And I said, Dawn, can I see you in the hallway? And I remember feeling that panic because God had a word for me. He gave me a word. And that word was scary for me. That word was shocking to me. I was not expecting that night. I didn't come to church expecting that night. Now, I knew I was supposed to be there, and I wanted to be there, but I wasn't expecting that. And I just remember when she come out in the hallway, she's like, what's wrong? And I said, I'm lost, and I'm on my way to hell, and I need to be saved. And she was like, do you want me to go get Todd? And I'm like, no, I don't want my husband. I wanted my preacher. And he was on the front pew because he wasn't preaching. It was youth night. It was youth meeting. And there was this guest preacher preaching. And he was preaching. And preacher, like, he was right there on that front pew. He was right there. And he comes in the hallway, and they take me into a Sunday school class where we can talk. And he shows me scripture. And he tells me, he goes through, but he won't. I said, but preacher, I don't know what to say. I panicked. I was just panicked. I said, I don't know what to say. Like, sometimes when God gives you instruction, you freeze. And we have to learn to not freeze, but just simply trust. And that night I froze. And so what I needed my preacher to do was help me get unfroze. He didn't tell me repeat after me. He just said, you sit right here and you start talking to God. You start pouring your heart out to God, and he will even give you the words. And he was right, because that's exactly what God did. And I kept praying until I knew that I was saved. I knew that God had saved me. I knew that a change took place. And when that change took place, I don't even know how to describe it other than I was sitting there at a desk, at a little brown desk in the toddler Sunday school classroom. And my preacher and my friend Dawn were standing way over against the window praying for me. And I prayed and I don't know what all I confessed. I don't know what all I said, but I know I asked Jesus to come in my heart. And I know when he did, and I know this is going to sound crazy, but I stood up. Because that's the load lifted, and as it was lifted off of me, I was like, I just stood up. I just couldn't help myself. I just stood up, and I'm like, and I said, preacher, I said, he just saved me. I mean, it felt just like that. He just saved me because I reacted to a word from the Lord. Now, I wasn't expecting it. It scared me to death. I don't know if Abram, when the Lord said. He said, get thee up, get thee out of thy country. He's like, I want you not just to leave and go over here. I want you to get out of this area. I want you to leave this area. I want you to leave your family behind. I want you to leave this country that you're in, this state that you're in, this town that you're in, whatever the situation was. I want you to leave, and I want you to depart. I want you to go over here, and I'm going to show you where to go. I want you to start traveling. Well, I'm going to show you. I've got a plan, and I'm not sharing with you all the details of the plan, but I've got a plan. I just want you to the first step is to leave, is to go. And by verse number 4, that's exactly what Abram did. whenever God has a call for you, that he wants you to do this or he wants you to do that. He wants you to accept him as your personal savior. It's going to be scary when he talks to you. Why? Because he's God. And we should be terrified for God to come to us and speak to us and to show us. We should be horrified because he is God, the creator. He's almighty. He's all powerful. But in his power and his greatness, he also loves us, and he comes to show us what he wants, what he expects. And maybe he doesn't give us all the details. Maybe he doesn't share with us all the plan. He certainly, that night that I was saved on a Monday night, in July of 2000 during youth meeting, I was 28 years old, and thinking I was going to be seeing some kids getting saved, and not realizing that God was saving a preacher's wife, and that, and an adult. I was 28 years old, and I had 3 small children, and I was not expecting that. And so God surprised me. And but his timing is always right. His instructions is always correct, and he's got the plan. I didn't have the plan, and certainly I didn't know that it was going to lead to one day Todd was going to pastor, and then one day that God was going to have us leave our state, our town, our county, our family, our friends, our business, the church he was pastoring, our home church. We don't get to go very often to our home church, and we miss them so much. But God had a plan for us, and he moved us 600 miles away, and he didn't move us out of the country. Praise the Lord, he didn't move us out of the country, but he could have. But he moved us, and we didn't exactly know what to expect, and we didn't know what this was going to lead to, but he just said, go. And we came not knowing what to expect. And when the days got hard, and they did for, the first 3 years were very, very difficult for a lot of reasons. But in those difficulties, just because things got hard, didn't mean God had changed his mind, didn't mean that we could just go home. And really, if we didn't have a word from the Lord on it, we would have went home. We still had our house. We hadn't sold our house. We still had, a family to go back to help us get us back on our feet. We still had, work that he could have went right back to, to opening our business right back. We could have went back in the flesh, but we did not have a word from the Lord on it. Therefore, we had to stick it out. And therefore, when he asked you to do something, if you know anything about the life of Abram, things did get hard. He even ran into a famine. You see that in verse number 10. We're in the same chapter in verse number 10, and there was a famine in the land. So he went through a famine. Now, I don't know how long that was. I don't know if he was there for a couple of months and there was a famine in the land, or if he'd been there for a year and there was a famine in the land. I don't know. But he experienced some difficulties, but he had a word from God, and he didn't turn around and go back. Now he's trying to go forward, and sometimes he didn't go forward correctly. We see that he went down to Egypt, and that's, he didn't get a word from the Lord to do that. He just thought, well, obviously I'm supposed to do this. And that's where I'm learning that it's not obvious for me that I'm supposed to do anything. It's not obvious that I'm supposed to help. It's not obvious that I'm supposed to do this. It's not obvious that I'm supposed to do that. For next year, I thought it was obvious. It's obvious that, I'm going to do this or that. Lord, and I would say, Lord willing. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, Lord, am I really going to get to do this or that? And I just don't know. And so, and now I'm specifically asking, Lord, I need a word from you to know what I'm supposed to do this time next year. What am I going to be doing? What am I supposed to be doing? And I don't know. But I do know that he has a plan for me, and he has a plan for you. And that when you're waiting on a word from him, no matter what that word ends up being, and he may have a word for me that's completely different than I'm expecting. It may be like with Abram, I want you to do something completely different. And I will say here if you think about Abram, and it says, get out of the country and from thy kindred and from thy father's house unto a land that I will show thee. And if you look at verse number 4, when Abram departed, it was not just about him. it wasn't even just about him and his wife. They didn't have any children. We know that they didn't have children until much, much later, but they didn't have any children. So it wasn't like it was just him that he was responsible for. Abram was not just responsible for him and his wife, but he had people that that he took with him, that he had to consider. So when he was considering whether he was going to follow the Lord or not, he was like, well, it's me and Sarah, and it's all these people that work for us. It was my sheep herders, and all these people that would have worked for them. And then also we see that he was taking Lot, his brother's son. Obviously his brother had died, and he had felt the responsibility of looking after Lot. He didn't have a son, so he was taking, he was looking after his brother's son, and he had taken on that responsibility to be that father figure in Lot's life. Now we'll see later that even God separates him from Lot, that even that needs to be separated, because Lot needs to be a big boy and go out on his own. And Abram, later in Genesis, we see that Abram has to move on, and they separate. But when he's leaving here, when he's leaving his father's area, and he's moving on, I think it was in the land of Ur. Let's see, he went forth from Ur of the Chaldees. And so he's leaving his one place of comfort, and he's moving on because God has said, it's time. I want you to leave from your father's home. I want you to move on. That he's got a lot to consider. Look at verse number 5 and you'll see what I'm talking about. And Abram took Sarai, his wife, so it's him and his wife, and Lot, his brother's son. So you've got Lot, and then Lot would have had a wife and children and things, and all their substance that they had gathered, in the souls, these are the people. He had people to consider. These are the people that worked for him. These are the people that he was responsible to take care of. These are the people that he had to feed. These are the people that he had to make sure had supplies and things that they needed. And the souls that they had gotten in Haran, and they went forth to go into the land of Canaan, and into the land of Canaan they came. So he's going forth. He's not exactly sure what all's going to take place, how it all's going to, but he had a word from the Lord. Remember, go back. Now the Lord had said unto Abram, that is where that's the most valuable information that you can get. What does the Lord say about it? And God said, get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house. He's like, I need to get you away from some things. I need to separate you from some things to separate you to some things. And that was to him. So God had to do some separating. That's what happened in Todd and myself. He separated us from the way that we normally would do things. The way that if he separated us from our core, from our friends, from our best friends, from our family, from our little network. He separated us from them. Not because they were so horrible, but just because he was trying to separate us to him. He was trying to set us aside more for him. We would have to learn to only rely on God and not our normal resources that we had. He got us out of our comfort zone. He got us out of our safety net. We were in a safety net back home. When you have family and friends, you have that. And God gave us that. Again, he gave us family and friends. And he didn't even, when we still get to, go home from time to time and still get to, we use that support. But what he had to train us to do first was to completely rely on him. And that's what we are still learning. Don't have it mastered, still learning that process, still doing that, still requiring ourselves to have a word from the Lord before we do something, and learning that as a skill set, learning that just like David, and he was like, okay, there's this issue. Okay, I'm going to inquire of the Lord. I'm going to ask the Lord about it. Lord, your servant's heard this, and I don't know what's going to happen, and I don't know if you want me to do something about it. I'm willing, because he's praying about it. He's like, Lord, I'm willing to get involved, but I'm bringing it to you to see if I'm supposed to get involved. And then here we've got, Abram getting a word from the Lord. I'm sure he wasn't expecting that kind of word from the Lord, and he had a lot to consider, but still, he had all that to consider, but still, what did he do? Verse number 4, so Abram departed, as the Lord had spoken unto him. He reacted to the word he got from the Lord. He reacted on God's word. What does God want me to do? What does God want you to do? Get a word from the Lord, and then just simply be obedient. That's all we can do, is be obedient. We don't have to know all of all of the logistics of everything. We don't have to know exactly all the details. God's going to give them to us when we're ready. He's going to give them to us when we absolutely need them. I look over my life and I'm like, Lord, if I would have just known. And he's like, that's why you need to wait. That's why you need to wait. That's why you need to be patient. God's always worth the wait. And it's always the best life is that obedient life, no matter what he's calling you and I to do. And no matter how scary it is, no matter, and I've gave God some excuses in years past, and it's something I still have to battle with. It's still my first thought, because I know my insecurities, I know my inabilities, I know my downfalls, because I have so many of them, and you probably, all your, when somebody says, oh, you're this, blah, 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 and you're like, oh, you don't even know, like, what I struggle with. You don't know what I'm terrible at. You don't know what I battle with. And, but we know. And I've said to the Lord, I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. I'm not good at that. Lord, I will mess this up. I will completely mess this up. Lord, you just know, like, I'll get nervous and I will mess this up. And I've given him all these excuses. But should I refuse just because that I see my inabilities, just because I know me as well as I know me? No. Because what does he say in return for me? And what is he saying in return for you? He says, but I can. I will. I have. And I am. He is the great I am. And with him, nothing is impossible. I want to share this little thing that happened yesterday. I don't even know if it really relates, but I was, for a couple of days, I've been wanting something. It's a keto friendly, because I'm keto, and it's keto friendly, but I've been feeling like I needed to back off on it, that I was kind of like, I was going to be getting stuck in my journey, because this was something that it's super easy to make, and it's super, super, super yummy. Oh my gosh, it's so yummy. But I have struggled with this super yummy thing that I make that's keto friendly, but still, even keto friendly, you have to watch your portions. And for me, it'll be something, I'll just go back in there and get a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. So it's just something that is super yummy. But I have to really be careful, because I have struggled with portion control with it, because it's so super yummy. And I was really, really wanting it. And I was saying, Lord, and I prayed, and I even wrote it down, and I'm like, Lord, I'm really struggling with this today. I really have the desire to go in there and, whip something up. And I just don't feel like I'm supposed to. I don't feel like I should. I feel like it's, I need to be able to get my portions under control better. And with that particular yummy, delicious, I feel like I have no portion control, because it's just so yummy. And so I prayed and I said, Lord, I can't. Like, it was eating at me. It was eating me. It was just like, oh, I want it so bad. And I was working on some Bible studies. I was playing with the girls, or with Avery. And, I was like, let's go outside and play at the playground. I mean, I was just struggling. And I finally stopped and I wrote it down, and I'm like, Lord, I'm really, really struggling. This is really eating at me, and I need your help. Please help me with this. And I don't know how to explain it, and I won't go into all the details, but within 5 minutes, the nagging craving was gone. 5 minutes. It was completely gone. And I was like, oh, well, I don't even have it anymore. It's gone. So when we wholly follow the Lord and we remember, when we are going through the struggles, just keep going back to Him. He knows how to give the victory, knows how to help. He knows He's got the plan. He knows what He's doing. When He's calling us to do something and we know we can't, He can. He will. He has. He is the great I am. Thank you for joining me. I look forward to seeing you again soon.